Tucked under age-old oak trees in the heart of Hernando County, Florida, sits a home full of history and mystery. What was once a simple 4-room house became a 4-story, 14-room, painted lady Victorian home with 7 gables and a one-of-a-kind gingerbread trim is now the Hernando County Museum and one of the top 5 haunted homes in the state of Florida. Its 160-year-old story lies in tragedies, as many death, injuries, and heartache have flooded its halls. At least 11 spirits are known to still hold residence in the building. Some are playful, some are welcoming, and some are downright malicious. An elegant dining room, Victorian bedrooms, a military room, an 1800s doctor's office, a 1900s communication room are just a few of the haunted spots. And with over 10,000 artifacts, it's no wonder the amount of energy this spooky space holds. So step into the past with me this week and take a listen about the historical May Stringer house. Hello, fellow fiends. Welcome to another episode of Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces. I am your creator and host, Cassie Opea. Don't forget, you can find me every Friday with brand new episodes of the creepiest and spookiest content. And if you sign up to subscribe for the Patreon or the Anchor page, which you can actually do for as little as $5 a month, you get bonus episodes every other Tuesday. You get a merchandise discount to the Wick and Fae shop at pizzaandpigtails.com. You also get a thank you welcome box with some creepy cases, spooky spaces swag, and you get my undying love and appreciation. And I think that's the most important thing to take away from this. I also understand that sometimes you can't always commit to a monthly subscription. So if you would like to support without subscribing, I also have a Cash App and a Venmo, but also buying merchandise in the Wick and Fae shop. And that's any of the merchandise, whether it be the Creepy Cases merch, the Magical World of Cassie Opea merch, the books I have on there, and also the Wick and Fae candles. All of that does go straight to helping get stuff done with the podcast. And once again, it's also very appreciated. And don't forget things like liking, subscribing, following on social media, commenting, sharing. All those things we do on a daily basis will also help get the podcast seen and into that algorithm that I will and have openly admitted I don't understand. Also, if you are a small business or a big business, because no discrimination here, I will have some upcoming ad space in future episodes. So if you are interested in that, I can send you my budget-friendly packages, and just send me an email at creepycases.spookyspaces@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into today's spooky space. Now, in 1842, the Armed Occupation Act passed as a way to grow the population in Florida. It was ratified by the U.S. Congress that stated any settler who came to Florida, lived on the land for 5 years, cultivated 5 acres, and built a dwelling would be granted 160 acres. And that is a lot. I used to live on 1.5 acres, and I felt like mowing the lawn was never ending. So Richard Wiggins was the settler who actually homesteaded the Brooksville land, but he decided not to stay. Instead, he sold the home to John L. May in 1855. Now, John built a simple 4-room home, complete with a parlor, a dining room, and 2 bedrooms for himself, his wife Marena, and their 2 daughters, Matilda and Annie. Now, sadly, John wouldn't be able to really enjoy his home for very long as he passed away only 3 years later due to tuberculosis. Now, this was a time when women were not allowed to own property, but Marina still stayed in the land and the home with her children after John's passing. Through the Civil War, but on Christmas in 1866, she remarried Confederate soldier Frank Saxon, who was a part of the Brooksville Wildcats. Now, Frank was what you could call a man of the town, I guess. He was postmaster general at one point. He held various positions in local politics, and he was a war hero. Frank was actually injured during the war when he ended up getting captured and taken as a prisoner. But once the war was over, however, the soldiers that were taken as prisoners of war couldn't be held, so they were all released. Now, this actually was what led to Frank walking from Atlanta, Georgia to Brooksville, Florida. And he was still injured at this point. And for anyone who's wondering, that's 422 miles that this man walked. And I'm sure he didn't do it all at one time. I'm sure he took naps and breaks and things like that. But still, 422 miles to walk while you're injured seems like a pretty tough feat there. Now, he and Marina had one son who died at only 5 weeks old. And just a few years later, Marina also lost her life in 1869 while giving birth to their daughter, Jessie May. Now, sadly, only 3 years later, Jessie May died of unknown causes. Now, the cause was obviously known at the time, but records of her death have been lost, so I wasn't able to find what caused her death. John, Marena, Jessie, and her infant son are all still buried on the property. Now, over the next few years, Frank married Tallulah Hope, which I love the name Tallulah. It's so fun to say. You can say it like as a kid, like Tallulah, or you can say it as like Tallulah. You can also say it other ways, but I just like the fact that it's kind of multi-functional as a name. Anyway, so over the next few years, Frank married Tallulah Hope, who actually told Frank that there was just too much tragedy and sadness and negative energy in the May home for her to remain there. So he built a new home for her and sold the May home to Dr. Sheldon Stringer. Now, Dr. Sheldon Stringer was a surgeon during the war. He was actually the first doctor in the Brooksville area, and he had money. And he wanted people to know he held money and prestige, and he just basically wanted to show off. So he actually added a widow's walk to the home, so it would be the tallest building in the area. It's all about size. Now, he built on 10 rooms to the original 4, and he ran his medical practice out of the home, and at one time, a sanatorium. Obviously, wanting to keep his personal and professional lives separate, he used pocket doors, which are those like sliding doors that you could go this way and they go into the pocket. But so they used the pocket doors to make this happen. Now, this was during a time that yellow fever and smallpox were pretty common. He also performed surgeries and amputations in the home. So I'm sure you can imagine the amount of death, just stressed out energy, pain, all around panic that lingered in the home. The last member of the Stringer family actually passed away in 1943, and there's not a lot as to what really happened with the home at this time. It just kind of passed from owner to owner. At some point, it was converted into apartments, but the building became abandoned because it was too expensive to keep up. So it just kind of turned into an abandoned home for squatters. It fell into disrepair. There was a lot of graffiti and just vandalism, things like that. In the 1970s, it was once again, it was kind of refurbished, replenished, and used as apartments. But in the 1980s, Earl and Helen Hensley purchased the home and the land because they wanted to bulldoze it and build a medical complex. Now enters hero Virginia Jackson, founder of the Hernando Historical Association. She basically came in and said, absolutely not. She felt this would be a tragedy to the history of the area. So she took to the community. She pursued the Hensleys and basically, just did her thing until they agreed to sell. Now, sadly, Virginia Jackson did pass away at the age of 84, not that long ago, but I will always appreciate pioneers and those who advocate to preserve history because I am a huge history nerd and I love learning about history. So if we keep erasing, and not really erasing, but if we keep wiping out places from history, how are we supposed to learn? Come on, guys. Now, according to TampaHistorical.org, it took 17 years for local Brooksville community to restore the home. And this was actually done on monetary donation, volunteer work, volunteer cleaning, volunteer just restoration, renovations. And it finally opened to the public and opened up for tours. And I think it's great that the community was so invested in this building because it's a beautiful building. It's absolutely gorgeous, as you can see from the photos. And I feel like the story just needs to be told. It was basically one of the first, it's what basically put Brooksville in Brooksville. So every item in the home, though, has actually been donated from all over. And like I said earlier, I'm sure that you can imagine just the energy. So with a history like this home has, it's a hotspot for paranormal activity, and there are reports and experiences and encounters reported every day. Now, even skeptics who claim that they don't really even believe in ghosts and spirits say that they have felt, heard, and seen things that they can't explain. So, I think even if you're a skeptic, I feel like if you do see or hear something, does that make you a believer? Or at least questioning and interested in learning about it? Now, when the home was a working farm and whatnot, there were about 90 slaves on the property. And well, we all know that the slaves were freed, so most of them were released. Some stayed because they didn't like comfortable getting out into the real world. But one slave who was freed, his name was Arthur Sinclair, and he went on to become a pastor. And Arthur Sinclair was very well loved in the area by just about everyone. And he would stop by different homes, and he would come back to the property to try to help and rehabilitate those slaves who were freed, so he could help get them back into the world and get them back, doing their own thing and just living their lives. Now, of course, there were those who weren't happy about the freeing of slaves. Most of them were prominent white men. I'm sure that's a given because of the time frame. And they called themselves the regulators. Now, the regulators would go around and perform what they thought was the right acts, but they were definitely pretty heinous acts. But they would do it undercover. So I kind of wonder, like, do you really think this is the right thing to do? Because if you thought it was the right thing to do, wouldn't you be doing it out in the open and not under the cover of, darkness? Or I don't know if it was really the KKK at the time or like all that, but they weren't openly showing their faces. So Well, Arthur Sinclair made the mistake of marrying an interracial couple. Now, I obviously have nothing against interracial couples or relationships, but at this time, it was actually illegal for people of different races to marry. So now, while I don't understand why somebody didn't just be like, "Hey, he's illegally doing things," the regulators, or whatever you want to call them, searched out for Arthur and they lynched him on sight. Now, shockingly, they were actually charged and paid for their crimes, which that actually really surprised me because a lot of them, you know, you know. Now, one of the men actually went to visit Frank at some point, and while he was standing on the front porch at the front door, someone rode by on horseback, shooting and killing him in what would be, I guess, a pretty reasonable revenge. Um, Now, phantom bloodstains have been known to appear and disappear, basically at their own will. People have seen the phantom bloodstains and tried to clean it up because they're like, "Oh my god, what happened?" But they won't clean up when you try to clean them. So there's actually photos of this, which I find to be pretty cool. Now, one practice of the time, of course, were when you didn't have a lot of businesses in the area, or you didn't have a lot of just even buildings. And remember, this home sat on 160 acres of land. There were funerals held in the parlor. There were other things held in the parlor as well, but I'm sure that with funerals came a lot of death, which came a lot of uh, ghostly energy, which who knows if some of those people have left the home. Now, a staircase that would have originally been on the outside of the home when it was first built was then not moved inside, but they built around it. So the home is now inside the home after renovations. And there's said to be a lot of paranormal activity around the staircase. People have felt people walking past them. They get cold spots. Somebody has reported, well, a few people have reported, I shouldn't say somebody, a few people have reported feeling somebody kind of pushing on them. It didn't say whether they were going up or down the stairs, but they could feel somebody kind of pushing and tugging. And so that's always a fun time when you're on stairs. Um, Dr. Stringer's room is actually very active as well. There have been videos of orbs, voices, footsteps are heard when it is a empty room. Ghost tours at night when people are in there by themselves, kind of trying to see what they can see or experience. They've felt and heard and just kind of seen things. So Dr. Stringer's room, which makes me wonder if I didn't do too much research on Dr. Stringer. I mean, not that I didn't do it, it's just there's not a lot about the people of the home from this time because a lot of the records have been lost. So it was kind of hard to find like a history of the people. But I wonder if he may have passed away in the home. Just because if the house was in the family until the 1940s, I'm pretty sure that he was there or maybe on the property somewhere. So maybe he's just like, I still live here. Thank you. This is my bedroom. Get out. Um, so a post by Reddit user Harrison Sawyer 1999 includes a video of his visit to the Hernando Heritage or the May Stringer home. And this video actually shows orbs. Now, orbs are a little difficult to prove because when you get an orb in a video or a photo, It could be an orb. It could be a bug. It could be a piece of dust. It could be a lens flare. It could be a lot of different things. So you kind of have to be able to get a clear enough shot to where you can zoom in and kind of see the, I guess, the makeup or the build of the orb. And a lot of the times, too, with an orb, it has a path. It's not just something that's like a lot of the time, like a bug will just be like, here's a bug, a lens flare. A lens flare doesn't really move too much, but if it does, it kind of moves with the camera because it's, from that lens. So when the lens moves, obviously the flare is going to move. But yeah, so you have to kind of get into that makeup of what that orb is so you can prove whether it's an orb or not. And I'm so sorry that I just went on like a whole tangent about orbs. Now, they set a flashlight down in one of the rooms, and the thing is, the flashlight actually was turning on and off by itself when there wasn't anybody really like around it to be able to do what it was doing. Um, there are also voices in the video. At one point, he's in a room kind of over to the side looking at like a dresser, and he's by himself. Like there are people in the room, but you can hear their voices in the distance. But you actually hear a whisper come up, and I couldn't determine like what it says or anything like that, but you just hear a whisper like right next to the camera. And then there are other voices heard in the video. Some of them are saying leave. One says help me, and another one says hurry. So I wonder what we were hurrying to do at that point in time. Now, Tammy, she's one of the tour guides, and she actually said that there was a day that her and her partner were setting up for a ghost tour, her partner Autumn, and she said that she had thought she saw Autumn go upstairs to turn on the lights and get everything ready up there, but then she turned and saw Autumn in the gift shop, and she basically was like, hey, did you just go upstairs to turn on the lights? And Autumn said no, and that she had been there in the gift shop the entire time. And that's when they both started to begin hearing noises on the staircase. So I think that's actually a pretty cool little experience. Now, a World War I soldier named James, who was a guest in the home with the family for a little bit, he was absolutely heartbroken when his fiance ended up marrying somebody else. He ended up taking his own life in the master bedroom, which, come to think of it, there's a lot of activity in there. I feel like that would have been Dr. Stringer's bedroom. So actually, maybe it's James who's wandering around in there. He is described as a pretty playful, but a protective spirit. He gravitates towards younger women, which is not surprising, especially if he lost, his fiance. He's probably missing her, and maybe he's trying to find another lady. Now, at the end of the tour one day, someone said, thank you. I love being here. I love the house. Thank you for letting us into your home. And there was a deep sigh that didn't come from anybody else in the room. And a woman's name was said, but they couldn't really understand it. It was said in a low whisper. But she said that she could actually feel like the whisper, like the breath. She could actually feel the breath when it was said, which is crazy to me because it's like, why are you so close to me? Oh my God. And then you sit here going, how often do I sit and have a ghost just sitting right over my shoulder, or watching something I'm doing, or, just things like that. Now, the home has so many reports of activity that they have a large 3-ring binder, so guests can add their experiences, and there are documents from over 80 ghost hunting trips. And the ghost hunting trips are actually separate from the tours and the the after hours tours that they do as well. Ghost hunting trips are completely different. So there's those, and then there's, the people who come in just to visit. There's the people who come in just to do the after hours tour. So I can only imagine, like, I want to go and visit. Brooksville isn't that far away, so I definitely added this to my list, and I definitely want to go and read through that 3-ring binder. So now, in the attic, which was the servants' quarters when the Stringers lived there, lives a spirit named Gary. He seems to be highly attached to a trunk that is in there. He has been nicknamed Mr. Nasty. He isn't nice. He just at all. He's actually used some inappropriate language. He's not a fan of women for some reason. Shocking. He's moody, sarcastic. He likes to play pranks, and some are afraid of him. But Tammy claims that he's not demonic or dangerous, like some say he is. But a volunteer did report that he hit her once. So, meh. Dangerous, demonic, maybe not demonic, but definitely not, I can't think of the word, not mean. The show Kindred Spirits actually said to bring gifts and letters. So now people actually bring offerings to Gary, thinking that maybe it'll calm him down. Maybe he's just lonely and needs some attention. Marena May has actually been seen walking around, and they claim that maybe she's looking for her children. And little Jessie May, has been heard giving off a chilling cry for her mother, watching over her dolls, which still reside in the home. Now, restoration volunteers reported footsteps and voices in empty rooms, cold spots, unexplained mist, eerie and moving shadows, and glowing orbs. Children could be heard giggling while they were working, but there were no children around because obviously it was a construction site and children weren't allowed. Bonnie Letourneau called it the Grand Central Station for Ghosts, which I could see that. Now, another little girl around 6 years old is attached to one of the dolls, and she told the granddaughter of one of the tour guides that she didn't like it when the woman touched the doll's cheek, nor did she like that she called her a doll because it's not a doll, it's a baby. One volunteer told Oh My Gosh in YouTube video that during one of the tours, someone had come down to tell them that the blanket was wadded up in the middle of the bed in the attic. And so when she went up to fix it, the bed was made. And that there was a butt print where it seemed that someone was either sitting or had been sitting very recently. So when she went back downstairs, she told him, she's like, "Oh, you didn't tell me that you had fixed the bed." And the person said, "I didn't." So now they're just playing jokes on people. Visitors reported hearing footsteps on the staircase. Then one guy heard the footsteps, looked around the corner, and nothing was there, but a shadow then ran from one side of the room to the other. And like I said earlier, people report being touched on the stairs a lot. Doors open and close by themselves, lights turn on and off by themselves, and there's actually a cemetery on the land, and it's been said that there are bodies buried all over the property. Now, a photo that was donated as it had been haunting its previous owners, so they no longer wanted it in their home. And they say that there's a woman that lingers with it, but she doesn't seem to be troublesome. So I couldn't really find much about that. There is a newspaper from 1912 with the sinking of the Titanic in the home, like an original newspaper. There are 2 time capsules buried on property. One was done from the Merritt Funeral Home, and that capsule is set to be opened on February 19th, 2100, which I am sad I will not be around for. But there's one from the Brewer Memorial Home slated to be open February 26, 2044. Well, I'll be, in my 60s at that time, so I think I can stick around for that. With the amount of paranormal activity and experiences, it's no surprise that the museum is certified haunted. And you can actually visit Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 3 for a 45-minute tour. $8 for adults, $5 for kids. Fridays and Saturdays is when they do the later, like the nightly tour, and it's by appointment only, and it's $20 per adult and $16 for children. But they also do special events, and you can set up your own ghost hunting tour there as well. If interested, just, get a hold of the museum. But also tell me, have you visited? Because I want to go, and I would love to hear any experiences that you've had. Maybe, yes, no. But yeah, definitely tell me your experiences. And when I go and visit, I will definitely do an update with my experiences and post some photos and footage that I take. But on that note, I'm sure you know what time it is. I will see you next crime.
You've been listening to Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces, a Pizza and Pigtails production. Created and hosted by Cassie Opea. All episodes researched, written, and edited by yours truly. Don't forget, you can find new episodes of the creepiest and spookiest content every Friday on your favorite podcast listening platform and now YouTube as well. Subscribe to the Patreon page or the Anchor.fm page for as little as $5 a month for bonus episodes every other Tuesday, a merchandise discount, and a Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces thank you swag box. You can also support without subscribing through the Cash App and Venmo. Don't forget to follow along on social media, especially the Facebook and the Instagram page, at creepycases.spookyspaces for all future news and updates related to the podcast, and maybe see some content that's not featured here. Like, comment, and share with your fellow fiends to get that conversation started. And on that note, I'll see you next crime.